How was life in Venezuela? As you said, it was constantly deteriorating and essentially thanks to politics.
Venezuela is the biggest economic collapse in the history of the region without any war. In the history of the world, there has never been a longest hyperinflation than Venezuela without any war. The same with the migration, biggest migration crisis without any war.
Migration meaning people leaving.
People leaving, yes. Like 30% of the people left Venezuela. We are like a 28 million country people, and then like 8 million people left. Venezuela used to be a rich country. So we used to be one of the 20th richest countries in the world in the 1980s. Our GDP was 2.5 times the average of the region. It's a very rich country. But I grew up in a country that was decaying and collapsing politically and economically. And it's a very transformative experience for any person because you understand that life is extremely volatile. You understand also that if you don't protect your freedoms collectively, but also personally, if you don't protect your property, if you don't protect your well-being, somebody will take it from you. I grew up in a place in which every year elections were stolen, property was taken from people. The inflation situation became worse and worse. So Venezuela became the highest inflation of any country in 2013. By 2017, we already had the hyperinflation, meaning that you have an inflation rate of 50% per month. So for people in Europe, the inflation rate is roughly 3% per year. During COVID, it was a bit higher. I also think that in reality it's a bit higher, but that's a different discussion. But 50% per month, meaning that prices don't work. They put price regulations throughout the economy. So entrepreneurs were not able to set their own prices. The government was telling them how to set prices. The reality is that this led to bankruptcy of many businesses, factories, distribution, pretty much everybody bankrupt in Venezuela, especially since 2013, which is the year that Maduro took power. But even before, all the policies of Chavez, who was the former president of Venezuela, really destroyed the Venezuelan economy and our ability to produce wealth. So they took the property of over 10,000 businesses. It's price controls, it's also production quotas. So they were telling factories how much to produce, what quality, etc. And it's also currency controls. People were not able to access the dollar or the euro market. They needed to go through bureaucrats to do that.
So let's pause for a second. I mean, this is very reminiscent of my Eastern European experience. And I mean, it wasn't really such an experience because I was quite young at the time. But it's just so reminiscent of what the Soviet Union and its blessed activity has given to that part of the world. So it really, there's so much parallel. But how do you get, and let's hear your take on it, how do you get from being one of the 20 most wealthy or wealthiest countries in the world, I guess largely thanks to the oil reserves that are available in the country, but certainly lots of natural resources, incredible sceneries and tourism and all the rest. How can a political establishment, be that Chavez, be that Maduro, and we will talk about that in a second, how can they set foot? How can they become popular? How can they become the defining political force and then just not only wasting, but completely destroying all the wealth that had accumulated?
Most people think about the Venezuelan story almost as if Chavez came by accident or suddenly or without any warning. And the reality is way more complex than that. My whole theory about nations is that when you have huge amount of economic dissatisfaction, you end up with political revolutions. So Venezuela used to be very poor until the 1920s. We discovered oil. With the discovery of oil, our economy grew exponentially. We became the first exporter of oil in a couple of decades. And from 1920 to 1980, we grew by over 6% per year in GDP per capita, meaning that we had the biggest growth of any country. In a moment in which Latin America was not growing very well. So Venezuela was an outlier. A lot of people flew to Venezuela seeking opportunities. my family included. A lot of people came, like over 1 million Spaniards, Portuguese, Italians came, a few Lebanese from Israel, like different places. Everything was going technically smoothly. Venezuela then not only at the beginning was a dictatorship, but then it became a democracy. And we had 40 years of democracy in general in the 20th century. But what happened? And by the way, not only oil was growing, but manufacture was growing in Venezuela. So most people in the economic theory, they tend to think that you can either do manufacture or oil. The reality is that Venezuela was doing both. So Venezuela was really becoming a powerhouse in the region. Then in the 1980s and 1990s, the situation changed dramatically. We had 2 decades of stagnation in which our GDP grew by, let's say, 1% per year, in which we didn't grow as much oil production. And why this happened? Bad economic policies, really.